I'm good. I've had plenty. Thank you. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming on a rainy day. I appreciate it. We've been talking prior to your arrival, Stacy. This is Stacy Phipps, our job developer at Community Gate Path. We've been talking and introducing ourselves. And some people are from the school district, working with transition age students in the school still, and others are at the adult service agencies. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about, or actually a lot, about making the business case and approaching employers with a business mindset as opposed to a social service or an educational mindset. As I mentioned, this is Stacy Phipps, and she doesn't go by the title of job developer because a job developer, that title doesn't mean anything to business. Business doesn't exactly know what a job developer is, but they do work with employment services. They work with employment agencies. So Stacy's title is Employment Services Business Manager. And she does all our IP placements. I think one of your best years, you've had how many individual placements?
100.
100 in a year. So she calls on a lot of businesses and works with a lot of individuals. Patty Holm is not with us. She's our Employment Services Manager. She's not here today, but she manages all of employment services, including we do group contracts as well, where Community Gate Path takes the contract and has the individuals and pays the individuals, and we provide as a subcontractor services to various hotels and businesses. And I'm Eileen Easterbrook. I'm Community Access Program Manager. That is the integrated day program for people from 22 years old into in their 60s or 70s. And I have a background in customized employment prior to being the integrated community program manager. So what we do at Community Gate Path, we have individual placement, group placement, and we have some customized placement as well. And we can talk about all of those. Just for background, Community Gate Path is the largest nonprofit in San Mateo County. We've been in existence for 95 years, and we have both children's services, early intervention, as well as adult services, and adult and youth services as well, youth and autism connection, social connection group. So we work with the full range of people with developmental disabilities. Our clients come from Golden Gate Regional Center, and then individual placements, of course, also come from the Department of Rehabilitation. So today we're going to be covering these four things, primarily making the business case and how to talk with employers. What do employers think? How do they think? And then how do you prepare for job development? How do you prepare to go in? How do you prepare your candidate? How do you prepare yourself? And what do you know to talk about? What should you be doing? We'll talk about various sales techniques, as well as in the end we'll talk about some marketing considerations. We'll talk about if you're developing a department, some considerations for a job development department, or hiring somebody. What does it take to be a job developer? Okay, probably this is the most important slide of the entire presentation. Hiring is a business decision. I'm going to say that again. Hiring is a business decision. It is not a charitable cause. It's not to feel good that you have somebody with a disability. Excuse me, I'm going to close the door here. I wondered. I didn't think they'd want to hear us all day, all morning. But it's a business decision. It is a bottom line decision. It costs to hire somebody, whether the person has a disability or not. Staff is an expense. That's why when companies are always trying to save money, you hear of layoffs. So now you're going and asking for an employer to hire your individual. They may have a specific need, or they have a need they don't even recognize yet, and you're going to go talk to them about the need that they have that they haven't recognized. But it is a business, it's a financial decision. And the other thing to think about is companies are not in business to be employers. In our field, we always call them employers. Employers got to talk to an employer. But the fact is, you might be talking to the business owner. You might be talking to a business manager. They do not think of themselves as an employer. They know they are, of course, but they think of themselves as a business manager, a store manager. And so their concerns are increasing revenue and decreasing costs. Efficiency. Hiring costs money. It's an investment. It costs money to hire somebody because there's recruiting time involved and you're paying somebody to recruit that person. It takes time to onboard them, your HR people, and all that processing of the paperwork and getting their, salary forms and their W-2s and their insurance. All that takes time. It costs to hire somebody. We always hear about small businesses talking about how much it costs to hire somebody and their health benefits. Okay, so it's going to cost them. It's an investment. And they want to make sure they're making a good decision. They want to make sure they're hiring somebody who's committed and going to stick. Okay, your success really depends on knowing how your job candidate can meet the particular needs of an employer and address some of these concerns. How does your job candidate increase revenue? How does your job candidate decrease costs? And why is it a good investment to work with you and hire your individual? We'll be talking about that. But bottom line, it's a business decision. And I think we have to get away from, it would be so nice, you'd really like Johnny, he's really fun. That comes after you've convinced them from the business standpoint it makes sense. Then you can say, this person's wonderful, I just love him, and be so committed. But in the beginning, it is about business and what the business needs. Making the business case for hiring a person with disability. Now the workbook will give you 3 different reasons, and I'm say there's only one reason they're going to hire somebody, and that's because it's a better bottom line. We kind of just covered that in the first slide. But there are other benefits, and I'm going to talk with you about the other benefits. And you might, kind of in a fishing conversation, throw in some of these other benefits and see if those are important to the manager that's hiring. If they are, good, then start talking about them. It'll be things like diversity and efficiency. But if you say diversity and the manager just kind of looks blank, go back to talking about the bottom line and what's important and the job that needs to be done and how your candidate can meet those needs. Okay, so think about that. And that's something that sometimes people in social service have a hard time thinking about, because that's why we're in social service, right? Okay, so what contributes to a better bottom line? Having a candidate that can, 1, meet your needs, and it is enthused about the business because the person will stay there. They're motivated to come. They're motivated to do a good job. They're happy with their work. A well-matched candidate reduces costs of rehiring. There's a study, and I think it's documented in your workbook, that Pizza Hut showed that their turnover is vastly lower and reduced compared to people with employees without disabilities, because the employees that they were surveying were motivated and appreciative of the job they had and liked and valued their work. As we already talked about, it's less management time if you're involved in the hiring process. It's less management time in terms of rehiring individuals and recruiting. We've already talked about that. But then, because you're there to help with the onboarding, you're there to help with the training and getting situated, and you're there to help with the supervision, you are costing that business, or you're not costing, you're saving that business management time. The store manager won't have to spend as much time. And that's often a fear that they have, is if I hire somebody with a cognitive disability, how long is it going to take me to train this person? How closely do I have to monitor that person? Well, the fact is, if you're providing on-site support, that onboarding, the training, the supervising should not be a burden or a concern to the hiring manager. And you're saving them management time, and time is money. We also see greater efficiency for professional staff. Now, I had the really fun opportunity to go into a biotech company and walk around, and it was a small one, a few $1 million, so that's kind of small for a biotech company, and walk around and see and customize a job and see how we could use a young man with autism to make the professionals more efficient. Well, because they had no one doing this type of work, we walked around, who fixes coffee in the morning? We can have somebody come in and clean your kitchen, lay out the fruit, and fix the coffee. Who does that? Well, it's the first person who's here. Well, that could be the HR manager, the VP of sales. That could be a scientist. Okay, they don't need to spend their morning doing that. Then we walked around by the labs, and it was really interesting. On the outside, there's boxes of goggles, boxes of gloves, boxes of hats they put on to go into the lab. Well, who fills those up? Well, you know, when anybody, a scientist, anybody, sees they're empty, they go and they find the inventory and they order it and they put it in the box. Well, we could save a lot of time. Our young man can certainly walk around each morning and just make sure the gloves, the goggles, and the hat boxes are all filled, saving you time. And then our individual also had some sterilization processing training at a hospital, and so we then started talking about, could he help wash some of the dishes and the test tubes, or at least rinse them and put them into the enclave? And the answer was yes. So we walked around and were able to pull all those pieces together to make a job. Okay? That created greater efficiency for the high-priced professionals, the people that cost a lot by the hour, the dollars that were being spent to have them make coffee, go find gloves, and maybe take their test tubes from point A to point B to get them clean. And so that's how you can walk around and look for how you can make the professionals, the high-salaried individuals, more efficient. Okay? And then there's some research that shows that people say they would prefer buying and committing to businesses that hire people with disabilities. So I think this helps with customer satisfaction once they're in the door and they see somebody with disabilities. It tends to make people feel good about that. And it may help increase customer retention, that people make a point. It could also create positive word of mouth. That is, other people say to a friend, isn't that nice, the store hired Johnny, or at this pizza place, he's a great guy there, and it's Wenzel, and he cleans the tables, and he's really so friendly, I just love him. And it makes for a warm environment and positive word of mouth with customers. So that's also how you contribute to a better bottom line. Lowering turnover, having management spend less time training and onboarding person because you're doing that for them, potentially taking low routine type work away from high-paid professionals so that they can focus on what they do best, and then also influencing customers. As I mentioned, there are additional benefits, but I always think it is the bottom line how they make their decision ultimately. But we know that hiring people with disabilities creates a more diverse workplace. But I think we have to work with some of our business partners to expand that, because every time I read anything about diversity and the VP of diversity or the VP of HR and they have a diversity manager, and you read what they mean by diversity, it's racial and it's sexual orientation. They need to learn to see that people with disabilities are also part of diversity. And so you may want to talk about that. We have heard, and if you've been in this field any length of time, I'm sure you have your own story about it, is that people in the workplace feel comfortable and good about working with people with disabilities, or seeing their company hires people with disabilities. We have a really good relationship with Electronic Arts. And recently we received an email copy. Somebody from the finance department emailed the facilities manager. We have group employment over there, and we have a group that does some of the light maintenance and some landscaping. And they are associated with the facilities folks. But someone in finance wrote to the facilities manager and said, really enjoy this group that you have working around our building. It makes me so proud to be an employee of Electronic Arts when I see how inclusive we are. And it was like this, somebody in the finance department was being influenced and feeling better about her job to the facilities manager, sharing that information with the facilities manager, seeing individuals included. So I don't think this is the final reason they will decide. It's bottom line they're going to make that decision. But these are things and kind of stories that you can relate that will just show an additional benefit of hiring somebody with a developmental disability. We also know that hiring somebody with a developmental disability, when a job developer comes in and rearranges the work environment, it can benefit everyone. And with universal design, there is a case in point, a project search. Are you familiar with project search? Project search is an internship program between a school district, an employer, and a job development agency. And there was one at a hospital, and the individual that was being placed in their inventory, in their supply room, was visually impaired. So they enlarged the signs so this individual could see and added some pictures and icons to those signs. Well, what they found is it didn't just help the person with the low vision, it helped everybody and reduced errors in the stock room. Because as you can imagine, there's all sorts of needles and tubes and catheters and Band-Aids, and they're all vary by just a little bit. And varying a little bit, they were always getting just kind of shuffled in any old bin when being stored in inventory. But by using universal design features, it benefited everybody. The person with visual impairment was able to see and put things away. So it was a benefit. And we've heard the same at Community Gate Path. This was a project search example. At Community Gate Path, we've also heard the same thing happens when you place somebody in a warehouse and you straighten it up and you organize the stock room of a business or at a warehouse. It helps everybody. Everybody becomes more efficient and there's fewer errors. And then you might all be aware that the high-tech industry is looking at hiring folks and developing programs to hire specifically individuals that have Asperger's. And I guess that term is not used any longer as of a few months ago, but it's high-functioning people on high end of the spectrum. And finally, if you have any businesses that are federal contractors or subcontractors to federal contractors, they have a requirement as of about a year and a half ago to have 7% of their workforce people with disabilities. Now that's all kinds of disabilities. It's not just developmental disabilities. It could be mental health, it could be carpal tunnel syndrome, it could be back, whatever. But if you think about it, this is not just weapons manufacturers, this is food services for the military. This could be health insurance, this could be, or I guess insurance, they're self-insured, but this could be food services. What's the other one I was thinking of? Medical supplies, manufacturers, anybody supplying any medications, so biotech companies, pharmaceutical companies, vehicles, nuts and bolts, anybody subcontracting, construction. A lot of construction companies have federal government contracts, and they all have this requirement. And you help them meet that requirement. That's just something for you to be aware of. I wouldn't go in and hang that over an employer's head and say, you know, you have to do this. But I would target an employer based on this, knowing this, with this knowledge. I would target one of them if you had federal contractors in your area, and you probably all do. Okay, so that's the big picture of why would an employer hire somebody. So the next question is really what to do to prepare yourself. But before I go any further, are there any questions in terms of making a business case? Stacy, anything to add that you want to highlight?
I think it helps to research the companies a little bit, just to kind of see what their needs are, and like Eileen said, you know, think outside the box with just like who makes the coffee, those little things that people don't think about, just to kind of get the conversation going.
Yes, yeah. And we'll be talking actually a lot about that. In fact, before you knock, we're going to run down what you do before you even make that first contact. Okay? You need to know your job candidate. And these are the important things to know. You need to know them inside out. First, what are their interests? I'm sure you're aware of that. But interest supplies motivation. Interest supplies motivation. Think of what you do. You probably do what you do because you're interested in it. That motivates you. Because we know there are some fun days and some great days, and there's some days that, rainy day, maybe you'd rather stay in bed. But what gets you up and going, besides the paycheck, is that you have an interest and you value what you do, and they want to have an interest and value what they do as well. So, know their interests. They like music, you're looking for music stores perhaps. They eat pizza, I guess it's Pizza Hut. But you'll get some very unusual interests that make you scratch your head, and you still have to consider those. How can they maybe be in an environment? How can they be in the environment? If they can't be the rock star singer, can they maybe work in facilities at Pandora over in Oakland? Okay, so how do you tie their interest to their work environment or the work they can do? Okay. You want to know their strengths, of course, because you're going to sell strengths. That's what you're going to talk about, is what the strengths are that your individual can do and how your individual can contribute. You know, if their strength is sorting, then you're going to look for jobs that involve a lot of sorting, right? If they love to rake, and somebody just loves to rake and dig holes, okay, so you really did like landscaping, and that's the perfect job for this individual. People that like to cook, can they do a little food prep at a deli before the deli gets too busy? You just keep thinking of what is it they like to do. And sometimes, I know there's fun stories about individuals come and they think they have a strength, or it's something that's an interest and a strength that kind of where they're at in their lives. I know the story of one individual that really, really wanted to be a basketball player, and you could not move the person from being a basketball player. Now you can look then, I would start looking at, what kind of jobs are around the Warriors team in the Warriors office or Warriors games, although that's pretty irregular. If you wanted a regular job, I'd look for the, kind of the whole corporate headquarters. But no, he wanted to be a basketball player. And the job developer I know said, okay, we'll find out when there are basketball trials, and we're going to take you and you can try out like everybody else, because they were holding trials, whatever they do, tryouts, and this must have been a semi-pro or something. Anyway, so she said, but first you're going to have to practice. So I'm going to take you to a gym and we're going to practice and we're going to count your shots and we're going to see how good you are. And he had to really kind of find out that he couldn't be a basketball star. And you have to let an individual down gently, but how can you use that interest in a positive way to motivate them and then find some other type of work in the field? So yes, you want to work with those that are really gung-ho and they want to, Stacy has one now, like be a piano.
I was just going to say, yeah. And,
a pianist, a professional pianist.
A little snack.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
Yeah, I've got this young man on the spectrum who is a concert pianist player. He graduated magna cum laude in music, and he's on the spectrum, and he's just, all he wants to do is play piano, and he's an amazing piano player, but
thank you, that's
it's
really nice.
hard to find that, that kind of job for him. There's not a lot of that. So anyway, I networked with a bunch of folks and in the industry, and got connected with a foundation that works with people on the spectrum that are artists and musicians, and he's volunteering playing piano at a senior assisted living facility, and they really love him though, and I think it's going to turn into a job playing for the seniors. So, and he's thrilled.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's a great story.
But I think they love him, and he's just thrives. I mean, he's amazing, and it's just, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to turn out. But usually.
And sometimes it does start as a volunteer position, and then they really appreciate it and they recognize it. And then maybe if he starts it there, then some other senior citizen center will know about it and decide they want him a few days a week too. That's fabulous. That's a great story. Okay, so the strengths are important, and they can be, all over the board. Environmental preferences and needs. These are really important to consider. And sometimes we look at their interests and their strengths and we pretty much just stop there and go, okay, you love animals, we'll take you to a pet store. And we might have you stocking and doing some customer service, only to find out that individual cannot stand being interrupted. So if they're stocking and then a customer comes, excuse me, because I always ask everybody, excuse me, where is the, the cat food, or where is this particular toy? I saw it in the ad. The person is like annoyed and has a grimace. It's like, that's just who he is. And so if you look at just the interest and the strength, really good at stocking, matching UPC codes, and loves animals, you go, that's a perfect job. But you can't stop there. You have to look at the other parts of their needs and their personalities and make sure that it's around things they're interested in, but in the right environment. And in that case, thinking I've got a pet store, we're going to go down and get this internship at Petco, that might not be the right thing.
Or the right hours. Maybe he can work up, after hours.
That's right. It might be great before the store opens, if they're willing to get there really early. Or a lot of stocking. I'm surprised, I recently learned, because I didn't call on too many retailers, but the Gap, they have jobs like if you want to get up and stock at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then there's other concerns, public transportation, how safe are they? Family members may or may not like that. Does the person sleep in? What does that do to their life? And so there's all those considerations when you're looking to do a permanent placement. Absolutely.
I had that exact situation with a young man who loved dogs, just dogs, and but not people as much. And of course, we always go the pet food route, the pet store route, but that's exactly what happened. The interaction with people, just not a good fit. So we got him in at a doggy daycare, like a day where he's really not interacting with people at all. He just keeps all the dogs in line, and he is thriving. He's been there for years. It's funny, the animal thing. A lot of kids have that connection with animals, but
yeah,
it doesn't really work well in retail.
It doesn't often work in retail, even though they love animals.
Store, right, because they're really just stocking. They're not really interacting with the animals as much.
Yeah. And then challenges. One of the things that's so important is talking to them and getting to know the individual. And if you don't have a lot of time with them because they're in school and attending various activities in a day program, certainly read the backgrounds and any information that might have come up, interview the family, spend as much time as possible getting to know an individual. And the reason being is there are things, idiosyncrasies, that show up that people that work with that individual may know. Sometimes it's not even documented. You have to be around the individual and then you pick it up on your own. And a great example of knowing challenges and how important it is for a job search, and I'm borrowing this story, is we had an individual that was coming out of the transition program. Hiring person met with the adult service agency and the job developer and said, this individual, he's really big and strong, he likes to be outdoors, he is a hard worker, he's quiet and has autism, great worker, and just, something like outdoors, a gardening center would be really, really good. And so it took a while to find a gardening center that was willing to hire him and try him out. And the job developer sent a job coach the first day with him. And the job coach calls really fairly quickly after the day begins and says, I think we got a problem. And it was, why? What's the problem? Well, when he pulls the hose over and waters the plant and he gets a little dirt or muddy water on his hands, he stops and he goes to the sink and washes his hands. Gee, when he went to sweep, he got a little dirt on his hands and he went to the sink and washed his hands. And then, of course, the joke was when we tell him what's in fertilizer, he is not going to touch fertilizer. No way. Well, the idiosyncrasy was that nobody had picked up or communicated was that he didn't like to get dirty hands. He didn't like to get dirty hands. But that was never figured out or conveyed because he was new to the employment agent, agency, so they didn't have a way of knowing them. So if you have like a day program, we have a Gate Path, the day program that I manage, in addition to employment services, your day program staff, or in your case your teachers, should really watch for those idiosyncrasies and write them down or convey them. And that was just never caught. It wasn't part of an IEP to have them have dirty hands. Nobody really kind of got that. And if you're in a day program and you do a lot of volunteer work, kind of teaching pre-vocational skills to individuals, even when they go out and do volunteer work in the transition program, they go out, have the teachers and have the assistants note those little idiosyncrasies that might escape notice if you weren't working with them day in and day out. And convey that. So you're going to know your job candidate as best as you possibly can. As you see, it's not a perfect science, but as best as you can. Then I think you need to know your own competitive advantage. When I first started in the field about 9 years ago now, I came from the private sector in business, and I did kind of scratch my head and kind of go, what's your pitch? How can you be successful doing this? I mean, you do have an individual with some type of disability, and they are going to work differently. So what's the whole package? Why does an employer engage you? And it's because you offer a lot. First, you're going to match the job to the individual and meet the needs of the employer. But other job candidates can do that too, right? So why hire your person? Well, it's because you offer no-cost staffing services. You can keep an eye open for other people that might meet their needs when they have other openings. You have a no-cost trainer, i.e. your job coach or possibly you, right? It's no cost. You do long-term follow-up. They're not hired once and then left on their own as an employee off the street would be, and then you hope this person's motivated to do the job. You're going to check in periodically with them. You are a reference on accommodations, on how to optimize the work environment for people. So if they need assistance with any organization skill, or like organizing the stock room so your individual can do inventory better or put stock away better, that will help everybody. If they have anyone else, by getting to know your service, if they have anybody else with a disability, cognitive or not, you still can refer them to sources and information on accommodations. And by the way, there is, in your workbook, it mentions JAN, if you're not familiar with JAN, Job Accommodation Network.org. It is a great reference on accommodations for you and for employers.
It's a website, right?
It is a website. There are potential tax incentives. That's when they hire somebody long-term, so that wouldn't apply to school districts where you're doing an internship. But this is when the first year they hire someone. It's very important, if you are going to talk about this, you need to know that you need to talk about it ahead of time so they can sign that they know the person's disabled when they hired them. And they hired them through an agency. And they have to sign the date and sign the document in order to begin to apply for the tax incentives. And then some companies, if you're working with an agency, and maybe even at schools, can get some visibility and free publicity and recognition through awards. We do awards for our employers. We feature them in various videos on our website. We put them in brochures, and so they're named and they're getting a little bit more publicity by working with our agency than if they hired Joe off the street. Okay? And I use the word that I said we're not supposed to use. Don't go in and say cheap, free. Don't demean, devalue your individuals. I would say no cost, at no cost to you. Because we know if something's free, it might be flimsy and cheap and not be so good. And we are offering value to the business. Our people offer value to the business. So now you know your candidate, you know your competitive advantage. I want you to think of the unique combination that you offer employers. This is actually how a lot of marketing is done. I worked for a large pharmaceutical company, and you look for what is unique, even if it's a sliver, a little thing that makes you unique. And that's your foot in the door. So you have actually a lot going on. You're very unique. You have the skills and motivation. Okay, that may actually be similar to somebody coming in off the street, but you have all the no-cost support that saves them time and money in training and supervising and bringing the person up to speed. And you do have the additional benefits we talked about of the diversity. Diversity might appeal to their customers. Diversity increases job satisfaction among the co-workers. And if you've matched them right, and hopefully you've matched them correctly, is you've got motivation. Okay. So those are all the things that you've got going for you when you walk in the door. Okay. Any questions so far?
I was just wondering about your experience with communities. Yeah, because I mean, most of us come from social work background and building communities. And are employers interested in that, on like being perceived as good in their community?
Absolutely, yeah. That's, especially the small mom and pops. I mean, I have more luck with those companies than more than like the big, going through like HR managers, and that's not nearly as effective. The community element and bringing awareness, kind of offering some kind of, like, we have a lot of social media that we do with Facebook and Twitter, and I sometimes talk about some like cross-promotional marketing. We can help them get some exposure free for them, but they like that. That's a huge selling point. The mom and pop and the communities. Yeah.
That is a great idea, to actually advertise somehow the business being part of the center. I mean, somehow
we announce it in our monthly newsletters and things like that, new employers. But, you know, especially when if it's in an area where you're located, where most of the jobs are, and to target businesses in that area, they love that.
Yeah, especially the small businesses or even medium size.
Yeah.
They value that.
I have much more luck with that than the HR managers that oversee, you know, that aren't really in the trenches, so to speak.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about then identifying employers and various ways to identify employers. I'm sure you've all had some experience. Well, maybe the person with 2 days of experience might not have gotten into it just yet, but probably everybody else has a little bit. So you start with the strengths, interests, and the needs of your job developer. You look for businesses that interest them, that are in your community. If you have, I would review them on the website. For example, I was looking at sports centers, and it just happened by reading 2 or 3 different sports centers and what they were like and the feel of them. One had a nonprofit arm to it. Who knew? And it was like, which one do you think I'm going to call on first? The one that is the bright, flashy one that costs the most, and the other one that's, you know, very inexpensive but doesn't hire many people, or the one that actually says on their website they have a nonprofit arm and they promote diversity and they're looking to help nonprofits. You know, you read first. You look for different types of employers that might match, then to select which one. Of course, if it's close to you, you might go to the one close to you. That's reasonable. But I would also look on the website and find out what other ones are in the area and see if they're one. Sometimes I try and do LinkedIn. If you got a manager's name or a business owner's name, I might do a LinkedIn or a search on the business owner just to see their background. Gee, are they part of the Rotary? Well, people in the Rotary are very community oriented, and they might be open-minded and be willing to meet with you. It just depends. And sometimes, you know, you don't have any of that, and you go to the one local store that sells records still or albums because you're into kind of that medium. Another way to look for employers is to look for repeat hiring. Even though, Stacy, you say you have a lot of success with small companies, you've had incredible success with large ones as well, whether it's Electronic Arts or Safeway. And you want to talk a little bit about working with Safeway as repeat hiring
Yeah, Safeway.
business.
I mean, usually there's a regional manager that handles all the stores in a certain territory, typically. And so, I mean, they've been one of our biggest supporters for years. I mean, they always hire people with disabilities, but just I think it's really important to create a relationship with the store managers as well, and just you know, your job coaches I think are really important that are on site with the individuals that were hired to kind of show the employer, develop that relationship with the managers. That you know, you get in with one, and then even the smaller grocery stores now, you can get in with one, but then you know, you can use that. All the assistant managers usually know each other and use that to call in the next store and the next store, and the feedback gets back to the regional managers. But it's yeah, it's definitely a good, and any retail store too, like Uniqlo. We've had a lot of luck with Uniqlo, and that's been really successful. But again, that's another situation where the regional manager has been instrumental, but the store managers all know each other. So I think that's really works well.
Okay. So if you have a Uniqlo store in your area,
They really
you would want to talk with them because the philosophy is coming from the regional manager
yeah.
of hiring people.
Hiring people with disabilities, they're wonderful. They pay well too.
So how do you all look for jobs, and what websites do you use, or what do you like? Any suggestions?
I use those two straight on there, the Indeed and Craigslist.
Yep. I've used them a lot too. Yeah, and you know, people do poo-poo like, oh, you're just going to Craigslist. But the fact is, that's where mom and pops often post their listings, and I've had success with them as well. A wide range from just a small law firm, you know, to a retail business or a small manufacturer, San Francisco Maid Association.
But I am running into the part where, you know, you run into a bigger business and you can't locate those higher up channels. Like I'll talk to a manager, but then they kind of get more into like the corporate world. And that's kind of my barrier that, and I'm pretty new, but that's kind of what I've been dealing with lately.
Do they give you names then to follow up? Like, we can't help, you're going to have to talk to the regional
Well, I'm
manager?
running into like, you know, HR technicians that, you know, don't answer the phone or do their best to stay away from their phone.
Are you looking to place like individual people, or I didn't hear what you were originally, what kind of
Well,
placements you do?
the harder part is I run into a manager and then they'll just say, well, it's more of something that my HR person deals with.
But they say that because sometimes they hear the word disability and they associate, oh, this is just going to be an HR nightmare. They try to pass it off, but they get the wrong idea a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, do you do individual placement? Is that
Yeah.
what you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's better to start with the local store manager and just don't lead. Well, let's just go into this later. But
No,
not
go
to lead-
ahead. I think
not
it's
to
important.
lead with disability. That seems to scare people away. I dealt with that for the first year. I've been doing this for 5 years, but the first year was exactly the same thing. I kept like the Home Depots and all these other ones that you just cannot get through to the right person. It's impossible. So it's so much easier to form a connection with the actual store manager or the hiring manager just locally, and then get them excited on board, and they usually can. If they know that no, you're just hiring them like anybody else. You don't even have to go through HR, because
Yeah.
usually we don't have to go through HR. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I would maybe your pitch, or just kind of not use the word disability.
Yeah.
Not scare.
Yeah, I tried. I pretty much never
Yeah.
to not try to, unless, you know, my student would like to disclose that. Because most of the time, my kids are very high functioning, and
Okay.
they're able to, you know, get through an interview.
You work with the high
problem.
schools then?
Yeah.
In the schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually say stuff like, not from the school standpoint, but yeah, I'm a liaison, I'm vocational counselor, I'm just helping these kids find a good career path,
Yeah.
like some job ideas, or you know, just don't even, I don't even lead with anything about
Yeah.
special needs or anything
Yeah,
like that.
no. And that was a big problem too. Is at one time in particular, I brought my. It's not like my badge is a problem, but just the first thing they read on there is special education. Because I remember going in and pitching a kid, and I remember I was thinking, oh, you know, this manager's really into it, because I was telling him how he's bilingual, very flexible, 18 years
Excellent.
old.
Yeah, sounds great.
And then the first thing she goes, yeah, let me call up our manager, and looks at my name tag and says, oh, he's from special education. And I feel like, you know, that just marked my student, you know.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately it
There's
does.
such a stigma. It's
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
still that people
Yeah.
just, yeah.
So some additional sources for targeting employers besides Craigslist and Indeed. DOR has distribution lists, or if there are particular employees, particular employers that you're interested in, you can go up to their sites and see their job openings, obviously, and fill out applications with your students. But the other thing is, during the deep, dark recession in 2008, and all, you know, businesses were folding and law firms, and I had my share of actual lawyers from DOR to place. But the way I was able to find some jobs is to look at the business times, follow the business times in your area. What's unique about that is Business Times really seems to focus on good news and who's the up-and-coming manager and what's the up-and-coming next company, or what's happening at the various industries. And it provides you really where the fuel is, where people are hiring. Even during the recession, they're talking about, well, did you know we had this incredible cosmetic industry out here? That we have so many people making organic, you know, pure cosmetics, that there's a plethora of small cosmetic companies, for example. And it's like, oh, okay, so now I've got somebody who's done that sort of work before. I was working with other types of professionals at that time. But you can say, oh, here's an industry that's growing. Gee, there's one in my area. Maybe there's something we could do with them. So the Business Times talks about what businesses are growing in your area. And it's fairly expensive, so I'm not suggesting nonprofits or even school districts buy it, but it's available at the libraries. And that kind of, it also gives you, I always like too that they gave you pictures and interviews with managers, and it's like, okay, I'll call that person. You know, or it gave me a person's name at a company, and so then you start going, well, maybe I can figure out what the email address is to that person, and I know that's not the right person I need to talk to, but I'll explain that I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, and could they put me in touch? So it is a source of information that if you look at it kind of creatively, you might get some ideas. Okay, eyes and ears in the community. I think as job developers, what's particularly fun is driving around and you're going, oh, there's the new business, or oh, they're opening up a new store there. I haven't talked to them yet. So just in your own communities, when you're driving, you know, everybody you're passing by have employees. Everybody might be able to use one of your individuals' talents at their business. So eyes and ears. And then when I am sometimes, not even stuck, but sometimes at the very beginning, I do a Google. I know somebody might be good for a quieter environment or nonprofit or, you know, whatever it is. And you put that down, like employers or businesses or nonprofit, comma, children. Somebody's really good with working with children and would love to be in maybe a children's facility, daycare or something. So then I'm going to obviously just type daycare, the name of the city, and see all the various businesses that come up. So I often start just with a Google search. I Google search everything. And last, but absolutely not least, probably the most successful way to place our individuals is through networking, is through getting out and talking to people. And there's no getting around it. Talking to everybody, everywhere. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, you want to develop your networks, and don't feel shy about explaining to your neighbors what you do. Interact with people everywhere. It doesn't hurt to say hello to the person standing in line next to you at Starbucks. You never know when a conversation will develop. One of my favorite experiences happened early on, my first year as a job developer, when I was riding a muni bus to the train station, and I'm on the phone. I suppose that's rude, talking on the phone on a muni bus, but I was talking on the phone to my daughter, checking in on her and giving her instructions what she needed to do, and the young man next to me said, I bet I'll be doing that someday with my daughter too. So I say, oh, really? Do you have a daughter? You have a girl? No, my wife is expecting. So you get into a little chit chat, and he's a really nice person, so I'm talking with him, and he says, what do you do? And I explained I was a job developer, and I was looking for, at first I just started that I was a job developer, and I help find jobs for people. And I said, what do you do? Which is the question you always want to be able to ask. So I'm always trying to set that up so that people will say, what do you do? And I can say, what do you do? And he worked at the Moscone Center. Well, I had an individual who was trying to figure out how to be able to work at conventions at the Moscone Center. So I started asking him how they work and who are their vendors. And he goes, here. And he just starts, writing the names of all these agencies and vendors or subcontractors they work with. And then I was able to identify and go call on those and talk with them. But who would have thought, you're just riding a bus, minding my own business. I'm not much of a commuter, so that's my big year of commuting. And I'm like minding my own business, talking on the phone, and somebody starts a conversation. And you just have to get a conversation going where they might ask, or you're comfortable asking, what do you do? And we actually, it's good to even practice that. Pretending that you're at a dinner party or you're at a friend's barbecue and you're mingling, and how do you know Susie, and oh, isn't the food great, and all that. Then you continue on, and oh, what kind of work do you do? And you just tuck that away, and maybe you get back to them later, or maybe you don't. But you're looking to develop your network always, always. You can also get referrals from your current employment partners, or at least they can be your references. Sometimes an employer will ask if, who else has worked with you? Oh, well, this big real estate investment trust has worked with us. Oh, Uniqlo works with us. Electronic Arts, But you can also ask those folks because they have friends and they know people in other businesses as well, right? Neighboring businesses, of course, everybody in your neighborhoods. Family members of people with disabilities you serve. If you have a good relationship with your families and you want to find a job for a particular individual that wants to work at a particular spot, you can put that out there among families. Families are really want to be helpful. They want, many of them want to see people with disabilities succeed, not just their son or daughter. And they'll be willing to share information. But don't feel bad if they're not, because on the other side, they might get a little nervous and go, whoa, what if they go in there to my best friend and it doesn't work out and it reflects poorly on me? So sometimes it's, you decide, should you mention them? Do you want me to mention that I've talked with you, or could I just have a name and I won't say where I got it? So it works both ways a little bit. Feel free to make presentations. Call on local service clubs. I'd love the chance to talk to the Rotary, the Chamber of Commerce, because they're open, they just haven't been educated. Many people haven't grown up with people with disabilities. And yet once you start talking about all the capabilities and the interesting things that our communities offer, our individuals offer, they're amazed. They're amazed at what people can do. What? Down syndrome and he reads? He can read and he types? Yes, and he can sort your files for you. And he can send faxes for you. Or he can restock your printers. It's amazing what people can do, but they don't see that. They see you look different, so I don't know what to say to you. And going and presenting to Rotaries and Chamber of Commerce to open their eyes. And you're planting seeds. Doesn't mean you're going to walk away with jobs immediately, but collect business cards. Maybe you talk with people individually. You see who people in the audience are agreeing with you. If somebody's not interested, okay, but if there's somebody sitting there shaking their head, you're going, got to talk to that person afterwards. find out where they work. And then this one was really interesting. I think of calling, this was Jan at work, thinking that she has a lot of people doing facilities, and she'd been calling on facility managers at companies to get in. And she said, how do I take this to the next level, or how do I get more contacts? You know, it's hard to find that one person in a large company, or you might not get that name. How do you find them? So she called up the local association of facility managers, and she said, and really local associations of any profession, they're always looking for speakers for their next event. She said, would you mind if I come and give a presentation? And they scheduled her, and she came in. She got business cards of everybody there, and then made contacts and carried on from that. And I thought that's a really creative way to try and get names. Okay? And then finally, just attend networking events. And almost anything is a networking event when you're meeting people. Okay, so that's really important. I think for a minute we will take, a 5 or 10 minute break here. We're going to then talk about how you introduce yourself to employers. And then we're going to have an exercise where you actually practice writing what you say about yourself and introducing yourself. And then we'll talk about making sales calls from there. Okay, so take 5 minutes. Introducing yourself to employers and the elevator pitch. I don't know how many of you have heard of the term elevator pitch, but it's just keep it short. Don't go on and on when you introduce yourself. Say kind of who you are, what you do, why are you there, or why are you talking to me? And you keep it fairly short. So here's an example of what I think is one of the really good ones, and this actually comes from Stacy, and I love it, is someone who works for a nonprofit to help people find jobs, a liaison between employers. We could actually say a liaison between businesses and great candidates. Okay. I think the reason I like this is when I was doing this and calling and doing cold calling, I wanted to indicate a little bit that the situation's a little different. That's why I'm calling and the job seeker isn't calling. So you start by cluing them in on that with nonprofit. But we don't say they're disabled. They are individuals. I'm assisting. And I'm a liaison. I work for both you or businesses, and I work for job candidates. And I try to find great, mutually beneficial arrangements. You can say you're an employment service for people with disabilities. I have used that in the past as well. But as we heard, then they're hearing disabilities,
Yeah.
and that's just echoing in their brain, and they're worried, what is this going to cost me? What am I going to get? What kind of HR problems? So maybe I should now take that one off the slide. Nonprofit employment service, I think that's also perfectly fine. But the liaison between businesses or employers and great candidates, I actually think that's probably the best example. So that's who you are. What does your organization do? We make matches. We help businesses find, hire, and train qualified candidates. Okay? You don't have clients. I suppose if you're still in school, you can call them students because it is a short internship. But we call them job seekers, candidates, whatever you would refer to any one of us when we're looking for a job. That's what they are. They're not a person with a disability. They're a job candidate, a job seeker. Why are you here? Well, I'd like to talk with you about your staffing needs and if our job candidates can meet your business needs. One of the things that I think is really important when you're talking, and I mentioned this later on when you're talking to businesses, and it was in my sales training 101 in corporate America years ago, is you use the word you. It's your business, your needs. I'm here to help you find good candidates. Sometimes I actually, as a job developer, would go in and really say that I was there to learn about the industry and so that I could better advise my job candidate. Okay, I'm still fishing. I'm still getting information about that company and that organization, but I didn't say, would you talk to me and can I, I see you don't have any positions, but I still want to talk to you. It's, would you help me learn about your industry and about your business? That will help me assess my job candidate better. And sometimes it just takes those informational interviews and then they become interested in your agency and you later can call on them that you have a good candidate to place them. So it depends if you're starting to try and build a relationship with a company and they may not have an opening just yet, you can go in with wanting to understand the business, their industry, so that you can better identify what type of job candidates would be appropriate for them. So it's always about their needs and what would help them best. Okay?
Just before I forget this
Sure.
question, with my 2 days experience. So the Adaptive Learning Center does a lot of volunteer placement and job placement, and they don't really have high numbers. Like they don't have 2 place people by, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're very focused on finding a different activity than the center for the client.
Finding a different activity, what?
For the client.
Okay.
Just because it's a day center, so they spend 6 hours in the center doing classes and different things, but they also want the client to have a work experience or a volunteer experience.
Yes, sure.
How would it sounds right if I pitch myself as a I help to find volunteer experiences and job search, or that will take, you know what I mean? They'll think, oh, this may come free, so let me go for the volunteer first instead of hiring them.
Not necessarily. I've actually had a lot of success with that, like with the YMCA, for example, where they, most of the people are volunteers there, but I really wanted to get this girl hired, but they were a little bit on the fence. But it's turned out well when they, if they're really kind of hesitating on hiring somebody, hey, can they at least volunteer? Do you have any, especially an organization that obviously has a lot of volunteer opportunities. And then within 2 months they hired her and made her an actual, you can explain how important it is for them to actually get hired, and that's part of the program, but if they're resisting a little bit, then volunteering it's a great way to just show them how amazing, and they'll end up enjoying the person, and they can see all their strengths. Everybody else gets to know them. It usually works well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound free.
Yeah, no, because it takes some of the threat off, or it takes some of the pressure off, just to start the relationship off. It hasn't backfired.
But you don't necessarily need to say you're a volunteer manager
Right.
unless you want to.
You're seeking opportunities for this individual, preferably work, but
Yeah. So seeking opportunities as opposed to seeking a volunteer opportunity if you think there's a chance to be hired. And then you can go either way depending on what they say. Yeah, yeah. But one thing to know, though, you can't offer volunteer services to for-profit business.
Right.
Okay, that's illegal for the employers. They can't.
But it
They.
works with assisted living, and they're not they're a.
Pardon?
But it works with assisted living, and they're a private.
Is it? Are they for-profit?
Yeah. But I wonder if it's assisted living or senior. Maybe that's.
No, I'm not sure.
Could be a little
That I'm not sure that is, if they are doing something that they would normally pay another individual for, and the business is making money and is profitable, it is illegal. Now the government doesn't enforce it. What it does is just expose as much. I'm on video. but the employee or the volunteer can come back later and sue them for wages that they didn't get paid.
That's good to know. Wouldn't it be like hospitals when they volunteer for a hospital, same as a living?
Yeah, because he's just
Percentage,
playing the
'cause they
piano for fun, almost for entertainment for the residents that live there and the patients. Hospitals have a lot of volunteers.
But see, they probably wouldn't, they wouldn't hire someone
Yeah.
to do that
Right,
normally.
it's not a paid position, okay.
They don't have a paid position for that.
Oh,
Okay. It's important when you go in is to kind of change your language. You have to use business speak. Okay? There's a lot, we'll go through a number of these, but think of using business terms: expense, income, revenue, sales, customer, a client, an employee, We might call them a client, a consumer, or a participant. I have participants in my programs, but they're really job seekers or job candidates. They do talk sales, they talk in financial terms, as you would expect. They have partners. We have families and agencies. They have partners, they have competition, they have shareholders. We talk about capacity building. They talk about growing their business. Most businesses look to grow their business. So if you talk about how they're planning to grow their business, that's something that would ring true to them. They would be interested. We use the word to collaborate. You might say you want to form a partnership with them. They do have, they talk about teamwork internally a lot as well. And they think in terms of departments, not programs. I think those are fairly common and clear. But just remember to use them and switch hats when you're talking to them. And you're not a job developer. You could be an employment specialist, an employment consultant, a staffing service, workforce developer.
Vocational counselor, I use that one a lot. I don't know why, but it works kind of.
Do you? Because vocational counselor sounds to me more disability and exceptional.
Well, I sometimes just say these are young kids without, if I'm working with someone young that doesn't have a lot of work experience and they're not planning on going to school, they just finished high school, they're kind of looking to get on track, or maybe the family doesn't have any resources, they don't have a computer at home, I'm like a vocational counselor to help them kind of find a good job match.
Mm-hmm. I've actually used career counselor.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to help them to get like an informational interview, I'll say I'm a career counselor. And they understand that as well. Vocational sounds, I don't know, just to my ears sounds a little nonprofit.
Yes.
I don't know if
Because
business knows career. Oh, because that's your title. But if it works, I mean, when something works, use it. I mean, nothing's better than success in this regards. And so if it works, I had somebody say, I go in for my students, and I'll say this for school districts, and I always tell them it's free labor. And I don't have trouble getting positions. Now that is fine when you've got students, and that might work in school district. In placing people for wages, obviously it doesn't fit, but you don't want to say cheap labor or degrade them in any way or make them less valuable. Okay, group employment. I'm here to do group employment. I have a group that wants to work here. No, you might have a landscaping crew. I'd like to subcontract for you. Have you thought about outsourcing some of your facilities maintenance? And here's why we would be good to work with you. These are the things we can do for you. Traditional or IP, we talk about it. In the real world, outside of vocational rehab, they call it a direct hire. I'm here to talk to a direct hire. I went in and talked to one employer, and he's kind of, so what do you want me to do? I'd like you to hire him directly. Oh, okay. Like, that's why I'm here. I want a direct hire. Assessment. We assess people. They evaluate skill sets. Even when you work for a large corporation, they want to evaluate your work, your performance. They don't talk about they're doing an assessment on your performance. A job coach. They understand that term. It's kind of self-descriptive, but you could say no-cost trainer because they use trainers. Companies use trainers. They put their employees through training. So if you say training, they understand. We've all been trained on our jobs, haven't we? I haven't been coached, but I've been trained. So it's just a term they're more familiar with that will make you more, you will be speaking their language. They will just be more comfortable. They will believe that you understand their business and what they're about. Job developer. I think you want to do away with that name. It's descriptive, but you could be an account manager, an employment specialist. Okay, probably for most people in this room, employment specialist works. If in fact you have one particular employer, like a large company that you work really closely with and have a relationship, you might be the account manager for that company. Okay? Our individuals are job candidates, employees, and staff. They're no longer trainees, participants, clients, students, right? They're job seekers. And customized employment is identifying the needs of an employer to create a match where our individual will be most effective in contributing to the business. And we've already talked about in accommodations. It's really setting up the work environment. We all have accommodations. I was having a hard time with the stapler, and the lady said, "Oh, you want to use my electric stapler?" Boom. That's an accommodation. We all use them. And so you want to neutralize that term if you can a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to take a few minutes out to work on your own elevator pitch. You know, we'll come around and practice, and we can shake hands and introduce yourself and what you do and why you're wanting to talk to one of us as a business person. So you want to go back to do this. You're going to first think of, who are you? And you can make up your own job title. What does your organization do? And then why are you here, or why are you calling me? Okay? And we'll take maybe 5 minutes, but I'll just kind of look. If you're finished, we'll get started sooner. All right, thanks.
It is for our clients. That wasn't sure about the clients part. So I could use participants, clients, or students, right? But
Right.
What would it be best?
Students or clients?
Because clients does imply the clients, you know, that they're receiving services.
Students.
I never use clients. It's funny. I don't really use that term very often. But I say, well, it depends on like the person that I'm working with. I'd say a young adult, or a young, you know, are these people that are going to be graduating soon?
No, they're actually all ages. So we have participants that are 20 years in the center. So I have people from 18 up to 50, and they already like, retired from work.
Okay, I was going to say, are they all looking for jobs?
It's tricky, but the center wants them to find an activity. So depends on how I get to meet them. We're gonna find things for them to do. Even going to the animal shelter, that would be enough.
So you're looking for them as a group, not like to get each person individually. Okay.
Yeah.
I do it personally by the person that I'm trying to. I kind of hone in on one participant at a time and kind of do it like that and talk about that individual. So if he's like if he's right out of high school, I kind of reference it like a young adult or a young man. Or, I kind of tailor it like that as opposed to just a generic term. But yeah, but other than that, I thought it was great.
Yeah. I think what you want to do is set an objective for the call. Every time you have a call, what's your objective? If your objective is just to make their acquaintance and discuss the full range of looking for both employment and volunteer opportunities, that's one introduction. If you have a particular person in mind, then you're there working with a young adult that might really be interested in the work they do there. So I think, when you go in, what's the objective? Sometimes it's just to meet and make acquaintance and develop a relationship, get to know what they do, and sometimes it's to provide you information on the industry. Sometimes it's really to find a job for somebody, but you go in trying to understand the industry, and that's why they've invited you, not because they want you to sell them on a job candidate, but that's what you ultimately do. So I make an objective for each time you're going. Is it that relationship? Are you looking for a group placement? Are you thinking of an individual?
Thank you.
And then I would be more specific to that. Hello. Hi, nice to see you.
Hi, my name is Jessica, and I work with Santa Rosa City Schools Workability to help high school students get work experiences in the community.
That's interesting. What can I do for you?
Well, we pair up with local businesses to give high school students work experiences. We pay the wages. It's a 10-hour week for 10-hour week for 10-week program.
And what kind of things can they do?
They can sweep, they can clean, they can greet, they can answer the phone, they can stock your shelves, go get carts. fill shopping bags.
Okay, yeah, but I would, so that was really good introduction. I probably would fold in maybe some immediate benefit, as I was thinking of, instead of me asking, well, what they can do, you might come in and suggest, well, we'd love to have experience, or not, we would love to have experience. They can help you with your stocking. They can help with sweeping. They can help, it's called facing product on the shelves. They can provide customer service. And sometimes you walk in and you'll look around in an environment and you'll see what needs to be done, and you don't have to say, oh, there's a big mess over there, or there's a bunch of returns over there, but you can just say, well, and they can help put returns back, and you're standing right in front of all the returns that are supposed to go back.
Okay.
So check the environment too.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Gregory Mason.
Greg,
I
nice
work
to meet you.
for the school district as an employment specialist.
An employment specialist,
I
interesting.
noticed that you may have some staffing needs, and I'd love to introduce you some great candidates or students in our local community.
Very good. So you notice I have some staffing needs, and that's why you made an appointment with me. I'd also probably put in there that you have some people that you think are great candidates for their business, but you'd like to learn a little bit more about their specific needs.
Okay.
So somehow you want to come back to learning more about their specific needs.
Okay.
It's kind of, I always, when I've interviewed people and they will say that, I am perfect for this job. It's like, how do you know you're perfect for this job? You even haven't asked me about it yet. You just got this little thing in the want ad or whatever, you saw the posting on the internet. It's like, how can you say you're perfect? So I just personally temper that they're great. It's more, I have some really hardworking, dedicated candidates. I'd like to understand your needs better to see if they would be a great match for you.
I am Kenya. I'm with Community Integrated Work Program.
Oh, nice to meet you. That's okay.
And I work as an employment specialist. I help people find jobs, and I noticed that I may be of some assistance to you.
Yes, and how'd you notice that?
I noticed you have some garbage on the floor. I have people that clean, and
I have garbage on the floor?
some sweeping done, or some windows washed, or maybe some landscaping. As I came in, I seen that you could use some landscaping done, and I have some not clients, but
Job seekers? Candidates?
that could use some employment.
Okay. So I would just be careful in noticing all the things.
Right, not offend you. I'm sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I would just be careful with
Right.
that. I'd like to talk to you about some of the people that I work with and some of the services they offer and what they could help you out. For example, they do landscaping, they do sweeping, they do window washing. That's always really good for a business, And so I kind of try and use it in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Just be careful.
Gotcha.
All right. You'll outdo me on this one because you've got a lot more experience.
No, I won't. I'm going to plagiarize everybody now. Hi, I'm Craig Rose.
Hi, Craig.
I'm an employment specialist with Community Integrated Work Program.
Yeah.
And I'm coming to you because I saw on your website that you were very interested in hiring a diverse workforce. And that
I am.
is what...
Yeah, we're really good at hiring all different ethnicities.
Well, I work with job seekers from very diverse backgrounds and needs and abilities. And they have worked in industries like yours, restaurant, but they have done the food side, they've done the janitorial side, they've worked with just representing the businesses in customer relations. They're just put on a good face, but have a variety of talents, and I would love to spend some time to see what your specific needs are, and if my services and those abilities of my clients and job seekers will meet yours.
Very good. Good. So you bring it full circle back to me and wanting to learn about my specific needs to see if your candidates will meet my specific needs. And that's exactly what you want to do.
I did have the benefit of hearing all of
That's right. And about 10 minutes longer, right? Okay, so you're brand new at this. That's all right. You're going to have to practice it a million times.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Angie. I'm from the American Canyon Family Resource Center.
Hi, Angie.
I'm one of their job specialists, and I came to you today because I've looked you up online and saw that you are one of the businesses that support our community and like to hire locally. So
We do. We're very
I'm-
interested. I'm a
I'm
big
here to-
believer in hiring local talent. Yes.
so I'm here to see how we can work together and so that we get to hire American Canyon. That's all I got.
Okay. Very good. Very strong start. Very good. Read about these employers that you really care about. I mean, if you think you can wing it, well, okay. But if there's an employer that you really care about, you prep. And it doesn't hurt to somewhere in the conversation say, and I read this about you. Okay. So that's excellent. Very good, everybody.
Yeah.
Every bit good. So that's you've got to do all this work before you even really, get in the door. It's your background. So you've identified and targeted an employer, you've done your research, you've prepped on how you're going to introduce yourself. And now we're going to talk about sales. And what is sales? I think if you just step back to what is sales, some of us in social service, if you kind of grew up looking at sales as almost a dirty word, they're just to get money. They're just, and they're going to try and get as much money from me, the consumer, as possible. But if you really look at what a sales transaction is, it's meeting the need of the buyer, meeting the need of an employer, is met with the product or the service of the seller. So it's addressing the need, it's helping somebody. It's not bad being there selling them on your candidate or thinking of yourself a bit as a salesperson. But we do know what bad sales are. I'm sure we've all experienced that. When you go in looking for, I don't know, a blue shirt, and they show you every other color and skirts and dresses, and in the end they don't really have a blue shirt to sell you, you know that you don't want to go in there. You're uncomfortable because they didn't really listen to what you needed. You wanted short sleeves, button down the front, and they're just showing you pullovers or something. So you know what a bad sale feels like it. And you also know when somebody kind of calls you repeatedly over and over again. How are you doing? Can I help you? And then they come back again. Do you need anything else? Can I show you? Let me show you some stuff. It's like, oh, go away. Well, employers' businesses are people too, and they feel the same way when you're contacting them. So you contact them. If you don't hear back, you give them some time. You don't hear back longer, you try again. But about the third time you don't hear back, you move on, because they are also kind of beginning to say, back off. But we do know what good sales is like. Good sales, and it's a great book. It's the I Hate to Sell book. It's old. It could be 20 years old. It's really teeny and thin. You might find it at the library. And it's about an accountant who is trying to sell his services. And accountants aren't known for being, really social animals necessarily. And I know that's I guess a cliche, but a stereotype. But it's about an accountant trying to get comfortable with the idea of selling his services. And what it comes down to is you're really doing a consultation. You are trying to understand somebody's need and determine if you can address it. That's what good sales is. You're trying to meet with an employer, understand what their need, or meet with a nonprofit organization and understand their need for volunteers in your particular situation. So you're listening and you're seeking to understand what they need. You're observing too. It's really important to look around. Yes, if you see paper on the floor, you know, right, that they need help here. You're going to identify what you have and offer and how it fits their needs. But you got to be listening. And so when they're saying they need somebody over here to help with the copier, don't go off talking about, I was going to talk about how my person's going to help set up the snack room. No, listen, they're saying they need people helping set up the copier. Address that need first, and then maybe offer the addition of the snack room. But this is This is the part where you have to be patient in your sales call. Patient enough to listen to what they need. Okay? And finally, and this is hard to do, but sometimes you walk away when there's not a match. But not in a negative way, because you may need them some other time with some other job candidate. Or maybe you're just planting a seed today and they're a little uncomfortable with this idea, so you can revisit them again with another client another year, another month, another quarter, whatever. But don't force fit. Don't force fit. When I think of this force fitting, this is still my same guy that didn't like to have dirty hands. So the individual young man with autism, big kind of strong guy, he didn't work out in the landscaping or the gardening store. He didn't work out there. So now people were feeling a little bad that they had placed him, and he was all excited and the family was all excited, and it didn't work out, so now they've got to find somebody. Well, they found out that Trader Joe's had a number of openings. So guess what? We're going to put him in Trader Joe's. It had nothing to do with his needs and his interests. They were going to place him at Trader Joe's. And it was because there's an opening, and I got a job candidate.
Right.
And we'll all feel good about this, because we're going to get him a job and he'll just bounce back from that bad gardening center experience. Anyway, so they placed him. And believe it or not, probably the busiest day of the year is the day before Thanksgiving at Trader Joe's. And they got a call back at the office, somebody from Trader Joe's. They couldn't find our individual that was placed. And so somebody ran over there, started looking for him and stuff. He was sleeping in a shopping cart over in the parking lot somewhere. He had no interest whatsoever in this job. It was, you will be interested because you're big, you're strong, you can pack groceries, there's no reason you can't do this, and you want a job. So now, the other thing is, don't let that person get labeled like he's not really interested in a job, he's lazy, you know, bad behavior. It was just a really bad match, and it was a forced fit. So don't oversell a job and talk somebody into something that's totally not going to work.
Does he have a job now?
Oh, let me think. He ended up, his favorite job, he worked at a radio station.
Wow.
It was KMEL.
What was he doing there?
He was doing really good. He's doing some filing, HR papers, and then there's something, and I don't know the name of it, but when they're like playlists and things like circulate, and he would run them between whoever was deciding the playlist or the next ad to go on, he would, you know, pass that on to the person on the radio.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And his interest, really one of his key interests was music. So this was just a beautiful fit. Okay, so now how do you get in the door? We already talked a little bit, or we talked a lot, I hope, on networking. There is cold calling, and if you're trying to do volumes and you have a lot to individuals to place, you might do cold calling. But you try to warm up that cold call as much as possible. And when I was doing job development, my idea of warming up a cold call is starting with an email introduction. But that's because I don't like to pick up the phone and then I've interrupted somebody and it's so easy to say no thank you. I kind of hope to soften them up through an email introduction if I'm not going out in person. And some of you go out in person, and that makes a lot of sense in a lot of situations as well. But you can create a template that actually has almost like your elevator pitch, introducing your organization. And I always say why you're contacting them. I read that you're an expert in this field, or I read that your business is growing. I do something that flatters the person or the company that I'm reaching out to. If I say who I am, and I flatter them right away. Because then that usually makes people read on at least the next sentence. You got to keep these really brief because they're busy, they have 100 emails, and they may not want to read your email. So it's, this is who I am, this is why I'm contacting you, and with the flattery involved, and then your ask. You do customize it, and the customized piece is about their business, that you are growing, you're doing very well, I'd love to talk with you. Or you're an expert in the field, it would be really nice to meet with you and share some information about the people I work with. Subject line always presents a challenge, and in marketing, you can have a whole room full of people like this talking about what 3 words to put in a subject line of a marketing email. I mean, high-paid professionals spend lots of times debating those few words. So Stacy has an approach and I have an approach, and you'll have your own. But why don't you share what you do when you're applying for a job for someone?
Well, so I call more than email, honestly, because
Okay.
I'm just used to being in sales. But when I have sent an email, or when I call to get who the manager is, sometimes the person answering the phone will give me their email, and I do tend to put something like in all caps in just the subject line, but like try to make it like enthusiastic, but not the. But I started changing. I do a question now. I like that one. Like normally, a lot of it would be like Craigslist, replying to a Craigslist ad. So it would be, usually it has like the position in the subject line. It automatically replies. You know how you reply.
Yeah, it has a requirement.
Yeah, but I'll kind of delete that. I'll just put like I used to put something like, referencing the job, like great candidate for this job, please call, or something like that. But I would try to put something in caps just to like draw attention to it. But now I'm doing Eileen's suggestion, which is just a quick question, which actually does seem to be working. It doesn't kind of, if I'm reaching out to an employer, maybe I haven't worked with in a while, just to not go into too much detail in the subject line, but just something to get their attention.
What would be a quick question, Mike?
Well, you're always going to ask a question. No, you're always going to ask the question. That's why you're emailing them.
Yeah.
Can I call you, or can I meet with you? That's always the closing of your email. You're introducing yourself, and the quick question is, would you be available to talk or meet at some time?
But I usually target employers that I already know are hiring. They've got ads up, but I know the positions they're hiring for. I don't normally do a lot of just blind, can I meet with you kind of thing. Because I'm usually looking for a job for somebody very specific, and I kind of, I think that, at least for me, that's been more efficient. Trying to focus on each, individual at a time and contact the employer based on if they have openings. Hey, I understand you're hiring right now. Especially if they've got ads up in the window or something like that. Like the mom and pops, usually they need help, so they like that.
Right. And so, we do a different approach, but we also do different types of job development.
Yeah.
And mine was just a little on the side, and you do it
But a quick question is nice,
10% of the time.
Yeah, it works. Like, I understand you're hiring right now. Quick question, and then you can do a couple sentences about your organization. Send a flyer. I do a marketing flyer sometimes, the one that shows all the employers we work with, and
Yeah, you can do an attachment.
sometimes.
Yeah, so my quick question, that's because when I was doing it, I tend to do, my background is in customized employment, so I'm not going after an employer who has a job posted. Many times I would go to people, I don't know that they have a job opening at all. There's nothing on the site, and it's just that my particular individual wants to work there. And that's where you're going around and looking for what kind of work needs to be done, and you're pulling from different departments types of work or tasks an individual can do. Kind of the example I gave you with the biotech company. So it would be kind of a quick question, and I often would say about the name of the company, or a quick question about something. And they have to, if you're a marketing manager or you're a business manager and you have a quick question about your product or a quick question about your organization, you kind of go, well, I better check. It could be a customer, it could be a partner, it could be, I don't know who it could be. So, and quick means, who can't resist? It's quick, just, I'll just click and then I'll go on. So that's why I've used it, but it's really when there isn't a job posted. If there is a job posted, I would be more direct, as Stacy has been, great candidate.
But what you said earlier with
Experienced candidate.
she was absolutely right with networking, like just talking to your kids, other parents, anybody friends, everybody knows somebody that knows somebody. So if you have even a contact at a company that you're calling, if you could refer or reference from use that person's name in the subject line, that works
Mhm.
well. Then they feel kind of obligated to look at it and reply because
It's a good point. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
worked better than anything, I think, in my experience in the networking piece. And
Yeah.
even if
Absolutely.
even if they're not hiring, but just having they know somebody at this company, and that's another nice foot in the door.
Now I hear sometimes I get people concerned with, well, I can't find their email address. And that's true. In a lot of businesses you can. If you're looking at a nonprofit organization, they give everybody's email address. That's easy to figure that one out. But for-profit will not give email addresses. And sometimes I try the direct approach. I just call and ask if I can get somebody's email address, and sometimes the receptionist is happy to do that. Larger corporations, they won't, of course, give you somebody's email address. So then you just start digging around, and there's only so many permutations of email addresses, right? It could be first initial, last name, first name dot last name, first name underscore last name. And, you know, I try about the first 5. If I don't succeed at that point, I may look on. But it's usually a combination. So if you think, the other thing is if you find one email address on that website, on their website, for one person, and it might be from a totally different department, you can still get kind of how it is structured and use it for your individual and give it a try. And that's been fairly successful. There's almost no email address you can't kind of guess at and figure out. Or if I get an email address of somebody that isn't connected, I may do that kind of a quick question, introduce myself, and ask if they could help me identify the right candidate or give me the email address. And that has worked in smaller organizations. They will pass you on. Larger, not so much. Okay, so if your organization is large and you get really busy with calling and making lots of cold calls, and you're like Stacy, where you full-time you are out there with contacts and tracking, you need to be able to have some sort of tracking system where you keep track, maybe even an Excel spreadsheet, of the people you contact. Maybe what was discussed. Maybe they said call back in 3 months or call back in 2 weeks, the owner is on vacation. If you have that set up in some system, whether it's automated or whether you just go check that spreadsheet all the time, to keep you on track, to know that you talked about something with them already and that they had a particular concern, so now you're going to talk with them again another time, and you're going to say, oh, I remember the last time I talked with you. You said it was really important that somebody that works for you has X, Y, and Z. Well, I have somebody now who does that kind of work or has that kind of experience or is really good at doing that, right? And then you're also able to say, you know, I saw you on vacation for 2 weeks. How was your vacation? Once you get to know them and to build a little rapport. And it's really nice to have automatic reminders. You know, somebody says, come back in 3 months. Right now we are rearranging our product line, or I just hired a new chef and it's really crazy right now. Come back in 3 months. Well, how are you going to remember to come back in 3 months? You know, even if it's just going to your Outlook calendar and 3 months from now, put it on your to-do list. Okay, and Stacy fills out a lot of online applications with her individuals for openings. And the one tip she has, if you are doing that, like with your students, you might, and it depends on the individual, and you have to ask them, but consider whether you put their phone number or that you put your phone number as the contact number.
Most of these kids, they don't check their they text. They don't listen to voicemails. They don't email. So I've gotten burned where the employer's left a message a week before, you know, after I've applied. So I'm like, oh, I don't check my voicemail, and they miss the opportunity. So I just put mine.
Oh.
And then just if they're not, unless you tip them off and you think they would be able to answer the phone and be, you know, able to schedule an interview, that kind of thing, tip them off ahead of time to check your voicemail. The kids don't do that these days, though. But then it's also a good opportunity to get. Usually, it's like a regional manager that's calling to schedule like a pre-phone interview or something, and it's kind of an opportunity to kind of take that and run with it. And you kind of have to improvise sometimes, but it could be an opportunity to explain your position, or you could say, "Oh, sometimes I've said I'm his aunt," I'm his aunt. I'll get him, but can I take? Oh, this is the job interview. It just depends. But it's an opportunity though, also, because if it's somebody that really isn't the hiring manager, they just want to schedule an interview, like Safeway, so they'll just call to schedule an interview for somebody. They really don't care. It's just an easy. You don't want to waste their time to explain the whole position. But if it is the manager or somebody that, it's a nice opportunity to kind of. Oh, we were doing this together. I'm a vocational or an employment specialist with this individual, and just you can kind of wing it, but you can do what works for you. But it's a nice way to get that employer on the phone.
Yeah, and if you're going to, if it's going to go directly to your students or your job seeker's phone, you might rehearse what they will say,
Yes.
talk about when they will answer it, or if they do pick it up accidentally and they're, on Muni or shopping, and they're kind of, not, their head isn't in the game essentially, they're not ready to be on the spot interviewed, then, and they happen to pick it up, they might say, would you mind, I'm like checking out in line, I will call you back in 5 minutes, and then coach them to go someplace and call back quietly. Because people don't think about these little things. They'll just pick up the phone and take the interview right there and not do very well in some cases. So they need to know. Also, what is their voice message? Are they playing some sort of outrageous music, or are they, getting silly and crazy because they taped their voice message at a party for who knows what reason? But all those things, listen to what they have. If you say, if you don't mind, this is what an employer's going to hear. Would you mind sharing it with me? Maybe we need to change it. Okay.
That, and a lot of times they don't know what their obligations are, and then they say, yeah, I could be there, and then the day of they tell you, oh, I didn't know I had this, and then
That is right. Or they go for the interview and they say, oh no, they were just wanting to meet me, and they don't realize it was an interview you rehearsed for.
Yeah, and they don't tell you, and then you're like,
You have that experience, yeah.
You got it yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so you're invited. I better pick up the pace here. You're invited, so you're prepared to meet, right? We've done some employer research. At the minimum, you're going to read the employer's website. You're going to check the internet, usually for the latest news and issues in the industry. It's like if you went to Apple Computers and you couldn't, a while back say, oh, I saw you introduce the new 6S phone, and you're still talking about the 4 phone. Or, if there's some big splashy event, the president of the company just got an award from the city for some reason for being president of the Chamber of Commerce or something. It'd be nice to know what's going on with that business. So just Google the name of the business, the location, see if they come up in your local newspaper. I tend to read in LinkedIn profiles, depending on the company or the business I'm contacting. I like to know the background of the person I'm talking to, because I always try to imagine their personality and what approach am I going to use with them. You're going to know your job candidate's profile. We said that. You're going to go to the meeting. Who should go to the meeting? Stacy brought this up as a point. Sometimes you take the candidate with you. Sometimes you go on your own. So you have to think, when do you do which? And if you're both going, what's the role? Many times you need to coach them and you sit back while they conduct the interview. But sometimes that's not possible. If I worked with an individual, very bright individual with his master's, and he, with autism, was not able to look at people, so he was going to look at the wall. So I went along initially just to kind of make the employer, the president of the company, comfortable. And once the president kind of understood the situation, then I totally backed off and I let my young man genius just go to town. And he did very well. Okay? So decide who's going to play what role, and if your candidate's going to come or not for this first meeting, because you might be just building the relationship. And then you're definitely going to rehearse. I'm sure you all know you're going to rehearse your job candidate. What are they going to say? How are you going to ask? How do you sit? What are you going to address? And sometimes you have to meet them ahead of time to make sure they did dress appropriately. We've had experiences where you have to run down to Ross real fast and change what they wore, or send them back home and get some clean clothes.
This is when I engage the parents too, and tell the parents, please make sure he's his shirt is ironed, he's shaved, or they washed his hair, no piercings, or just the parents usually will help if they're involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sales 101, real quick, I think you would know this. You're going to listen, and look around and observe and pick up essentially clues on what to say and how to present. Smile, positive body language, sitting up straight, eye contact, being very interested in what they have to say. And you might kind of observe the different personalities. Now, Stacy and I have each had training, and it's funny, we were comparing notes when we were putting the presentation together, and both from her industry and my industry in the past, we've both got training where you look at people in kind of these four boxes. And are you a dominant driver? So is somebody sitting there, really stern and very solid and very sharp and precise in how they speak to you, and they're checking their watch and their emails going, then you also have to be very direct, cut to the chase, don't waste my time. All right? Sometimes you've got somebody very expressive, and I like somebody that's very expressive because then they talk a lot, but pretty soon you'll find out they'll be talking about everything, and you have to actually kind of rein them in to help focus them on their needs and what you want to accomplish in that meeting. Then you have the conformist, or the person who is very analytical, and that's where you have to make a really logical case. Just think of an outline form from school. These are your needs, this is what my person can do, this is the service we offer, and this is the value, and this is how it will help. Don't tell stories, just kind of make it really clear. And then they might want some articles. They might be the one, well, that's really interesting, can you show me an article about that? Or they would say, what other employers do this? That's when you want to say, well, we work with these other employers. Can I talk to one of them? You might see if you can reference one of them. And then there's those that are kind of, maybe they're a little quiet or amiable and very patient and a little slower. You want to get in, get out, you got to make another call, but they want you to take the time with them. And you might notice the weather with them, and you might just be very friendly and a little bit slower and not so direct. If you're a direct person, you need to tone it down a little bit. Okay? It's not that you're not yourself, but you need to realize they receive information and they value different personalities, and you want to make yourself such that they are comfortable with you. Again, it is always focusing on you. So as much as you can when you're practicing or thinking to yourself, you think your needs. How can I help you? Listen more than you speak. I sometimes take notes. Let employers tell you what their needs are. Repeat and ask questions if you're not clear. Don't assume. And I say watch body language too. I saw sales not too long ago, and I was really surprised that and I was with somebody else, I wasn't doing it, and we kind of had made the point already. And then the person just kept talking and talking and talking. And I could see the person receiving the information, eyes just glazing over. Now be aware, if you're done, you're done. If they've agreed to what you want, then just don't go on and on and on and on. Okay? You're always going to customize your pitch a little bit because you've listened to their needs and you're going to talk about what they want to talk about. And you talk about the benefits of working with your individual. It is a little bit different how you present your case depending on if you're talking to the hiring manager. Hiring manager, that's really who you want to talk to. You really don't want to go in circles with the HR department. You would prefer to talk to the hiring manager so you can understand their needs, and if they're supporting you, you're going to probably get a hire. That's needs and abilities. If you are talking on a larger level, like at the regional or the district manager's office, it will be about needs, but they're concerned on more about the revenue, the expense, the return on investment, how hiring your individual might provide a competitive advantage. So they're looking more at the marketing and the global aspects of this, a broader aspect than a manager, which I have a need today, I need somebody to do this job. This person is more interested in how this might be good for public relations, this is a good return on investment. And what are your competitive advantages? Gee, no cost, low cost training. When calling on either, this is the thing that we probably all forget about, and this is important, is hidden fears. Now we're comfortable, we probably can approach anybody in any situation with any kind of background and disability. But you have to know a lot of people really aren't comfortable. They haven't sat across from somebody with Down syndrome and spoken with them ever. Or they haven't sat and talked to a person who's visually impaired. Now, we kind of go, well, it's common sense, just be a person. But it still feels a little awkward to them, and they might be, in their own mind, thinking about this a little bit. So you need to address some of those fears. Like, how do I relate to a person with a disability? I saw this when I was doing one kind of job development for one individual, and this was a young man, that hiring manager. And so I mentioned, oh, he rides his bike, and he could ride his bike over here. Well, he rides a bike. I ride my bike to work too. Okay, so now we're talking about just two human beings, and it just seemed to like, whew, okay, I guess I could talk to him. I'll have something in common. You know, if you can pick up something, I mean, it was just serendipity. I happened to throw that out. And it turned out he didn't ride his bike to work after all, but anyway, it was just that connection. You could see the relief, like, oh, he's a person. Okay, I can relate. And so that's their concern. Another concern is often accommodation. Accommodation. How much is it going to cost me? Many times you have to, I mean, if there's no accommodation needed, you might say that and take it off the table. But sometimes there is an accommodation needed. And then we just say what's needed and how it'll make the person more productive, and that we all use accommodations. Also, the average accommodation for even the most significantly impaired, kind of the broad spectrum, is $500, I believe, on the JAN website. It will tell you that. I don't know, that was the latest research a few years ago. I don't know if research shows a different number now or not. But there's a number, and I think it doesn't cost more than $500. I would probably not say that to a small business. $500 to a small retailer, that is a lot. But you're probably not putting somebody in there that needs special technology then. If I'm talking to a large corporation hiring somebody visually impaired, then I'm going to have a ballpark range for what that software has. I also work really closely with the Department of Rehabilitation to minimize those costs if they are going to be significant. And much of the time they're not. You might say, when they're asking about one, it doesn't need any. Oh, if he needs something, it's something that we can craft ourselves. I mean, somebody needed help reaching a light switch, so we put a hook on the end of a pole, you know, and a dowel. You know, we did it for them. It's no cost. It's, you know, it's negligible. And so you might talk about things like that. How much time is this going to take to bring them up to speed? And it's like, I'm honest. It might take a little longer, but not on your part. At no cost to you, we have a trainer there that will be with them until they produce work up to your specifications. Quality and quantity. And so it's to meet your needs, to your specifications. We will be there, support this individual until they accomplish what you need them to do. And then the big question, of course, is what if it doesn't work out? Because everybody's afraid, oh boy, now I've got a lawsuit that I discriminated against somebody. And we make it really clear, what if it doesn't work out? The first thing I say, well, you fire them like everybody else. I'm like, oh, yeah. And he said, well, you know, you probably have internal processes, right? If something doesn't work out, whatever your process is for someone without a disability, it is exactly the same for somebody with a disability.
But honestly, is that something that's happening very often now? That, you know, that clients sue the company because they feel discriminated?
I think it's certainly, I don't know of any cases but for the developmental disability community, but there are lots of cases for people who have a back injury or carpal tunnel syndrome that those types of cases come up all the time.
Well, because is the legal backing that probation period too? Because if they're not working out, then they can terminate it based on their.
Oh, because of probationary period? Yeah, and there's also, California is called an at-will, an at-will state. So that my understanding is they can terminate you without cause.
Yeah.
But most companies and businesses don't do that.
Yeah. It's just discrimination. I hear cases, but no more like in race or language. That there's people that comes back with that. Like I felt like this company discriminated me, and
Right.
so I was wondering if the employers are really, is that something real? It's a real thing.
Oh, it really is.
You know what I mean?
It is a real thing.
Because then it'll be.
But not so much from the people with developmental disabilities.
Right. So it's good to remind them the difference and how diversity, right? The different diversities and how this is going to bring that diversity and doesn't bring that.
Right, that you don't see it among these because in fact these individuals, because if they're failing then sometimes we go, did we place them right? Or did we train them right? Can you change the job? Gee, they love to come, they're really good at sorting the silverware, but they're awful at the French fries plate, and so maybe they're wiping tables more. So just like really you and I at jobs, after you're there a while, you find out what you do really best and how they kind of go, well, you can do this because you're good at that, and you can do this because you're good at that. That if an employer is open-minded, they will find what that individual can do.
Right.
But if in fact they really can't perform, or they go in and occasionally have tirades, you rearrange the furniture so it totally flipped somebody out. If you have a good relationship with the employer and you've been checking with them, sometimes the employer will just say, well, you come down here and calm this person down, and you might say, you know what, send them home, I will talk with them. But they don't fire the individual because they have a relationship with you and they like the individual, they know there's a disability involved, and they will just have you work with them and you can get them back into that spot. And I've seen that. I've seen that. But you have to have a good relationship where their employer will call you and trust you and say, John really, he's flipping out. It's true story. They moved the computers and he just can't cope with the change today. And I told him to go home. And you go, absolutely right. You tell him to go home. I'm going to talk with him. We'll come in with him tomorrow. We'll work with him and get him adjusted and acclimated to the new environment. And then they often don't terminate. And sometimes our people deserve to be terminated. They didn't want the job, or they don't like it, or they're tired, just like, you might get tired and change jobs. Okay. So now you've got your person hired. You've addressed the fears. We're going to wrap up fairly quickly here. The employer engagement. If you want an ongoing relationship with this business, it is so important to maintain contact with them. Okay, you've placed somebody. You don't then disappear and never show up again. You might call and see how they're doing, how the person you placed is doing. You might see how the business, do they have any other needs that you can help meet. Excellent customer service is a huge competitive advantage that you can offer, being there for them. And as Stacy knows, it is 5 times more effective to maintain an existing one, or it's 5 times harder, 5 times more effort. Okay, so I read it backwards.
More effort to get a new employee.
It is 5 times more effort to get a new one than to maintain an existing relationship.
You're basically like an account manager and working for the individual you're trying to place. It's like 2 different skill sets, but it really does make a huge difference with the repeat hires and the relationship. It's everything, really.
Right, and we talk a little bit about that. It'll go on. Oh, the set. Coming up, we're going to talk about thinking like an account manager as well as the salesperson. The salesperson, so you've done the placement, that's great, but then you don't go away. You maintain that relationship, and that's the account management place. Also, your agencies and even school districts should recognize employers who hire people with disabilities and give them some publicity and give them acknowledgement publicly, even in your brochures, your newsletters, your website. Award them at your dinners and your events. And you could develop a logo or a sticker that can go on somebody's window. You know, all those decals, I'm a member of the BBB, you know, Better Business Bureau approves me. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and this can be, you know, I hire diversity, or I hire great candidates from your agency. I would probably stay away from I hire people with disabilities. I think that's a little rude, but it would be that I hire great people with this organization, or with your logo or something. Okay, none of you, well, just one, has a development department to manage. Let me. So we'll go through this fairly quick. This is the last. We're going to talk about organizational structure, how you structure a department, management strategies, and the skill set necessary. And then probably, well, we're talking about managing burnout. It's how you manage your own burnout. You know, how do you, after you knock on a number of doors, or you place somebody and it doesn't work out, you know, how do you keep going? Okay, some organizations have case management and external sales as different team members. Community Gate Path has case management separate from external sales. And yet, to be successful at either one, you have to have a lot of communication and work together. The team members are hired for their unique skill sets, but communication and teamwork at distance can be challenging. Case management and external sales are the same person. And we actually have that. We're kind of a hybrid of these, because there is a case management person from our day program that manages the individual, but Stacy is still responsible for knowing that individual, so she does some case management and all the external sales. But this is nice in that you know the individual inside and out if you're their case manager and you're calling on businesses for them. If you're managing a large department, and I don't know if you're doing that, but individuals across multiple sites and locations, how do you help them focus? What should they focus on first, or which participants? How do you prioritize your participants? Right now, I have 100 people in my day program, and I would love to see Stacy place 100 people in employment. But how does the agency, you know, prioritize the list? Because there are wait lists for job developers. Which business should your job developer staff focus on? It might be by geography, it might be knowing a particular industry well, it might be business size. You prioritize prospects by job candidates' interests and motivation, we know that, and by organizational goals. And one thing that you need to know, and it's important that you all know, is that one of the things is you have to have a response plan in place when an employer or employee requires assistance, medium assistance. Just like somebody's got to answer the phone when that employer says somebody's having a meltdown, come quick, okay? Or somebody didn't show. I mean, everything else drops and it's a fire, right? And you focus on solving that employer's situation to keep your client employed and the employer happy. Hiring a job developer. So here's a job developer, the characteristics, and you can see where you're at on this. Usually it's very, very important to have a deep connection with the mission, because that's what fuels your fire, right? That's what, when you don't want to call, or you're just not sure you want to knock, or you've done 5 and should you do 8 today or not. It's really having the connection to the mission and thinking of the individual. You should have some sales background, or be comfortable with sales, or learn to be comfortable with sales. And you can learn to be if you're just thinking about representing the individuals and meeting the needs of an employer. And account management, and that is after the sale, after they bought and after they hired, can you still continue to maintain the relationship? Whether it's stopping in at their business because you live in the neighborhood, you're going to buy something from them, or stopping in to check on how their business is going or how your job's placement, your individual is doing. Okay? You've got to be flexible. We know working with the individuals we have to be really creative and flexible to find work for them and coach them. Customer service skills, that's right. You have customer service skills and account management, focusing on the business needs. Friendly, social, having a good personality. Organization and time management skills, keeping track of when you called people and when you need to call them back again. Ability to work independently, communication skills, and this goes across the board, all the way from the business side with the employer to the individual to the families, and then also to the third-party agencies we work with. And finally, the ability to manage rejection with confidence, because when you're calling on employers, you know you're going to be told no. You're going to be told no some of the time. And I think when you're in sales, you have to think of it as a batting average. I'm not big in baseball or anything, but I think if you do like .3, or isn't that like really good? I mean, doesn't that make you a pro and like great? So that's like 3 out of 10 times. Well, if you connect with an employer 3 out of 10 times, wow, that's fantastic. And we all have our own batting averages. And it's just a batting average. And so, you know, some days is a bust and other days are a real charge and you're on a roll. Okay, so preventing burnout is important. Going to trainings like this, talking to other people, getting new ideas, or just getting enthused again. Having managers that really understand what it's like to be a job developer and to be out there, to understand business and how it works. Team support's important. You're out on your own a lot, so maybe I should be calling Stacy more. Communication, how are you doing with that individual? Can I help you? How can I support you? Cheering with them when they have a success. When Stacy just at break shared a voice message she got from a young man who just placed that she's worked with for a long, long time. Yeah. Very, very difficult. And she finally got him a job.
Well, it's been like his third job, but he's just, should I go into it now or no?
We're running short, but just real kind of, yeah.
He's just a really tough case. He's had a lot of health problems and debilitating anxiety. He's like an abused rescue dog, you know what I mean? Like this big guy, but just so painfully shy and just damaged, and every job he's had, he's panicked after like the first day and had heard voices, and he just, you know, because he's been teased a lot growing up, and it's just been really rough. And so this is the third job, and he just left a message thanking me, and how it's a perfect fit for him finally, and he sounds better than ever. And it's just been, those are the things that make it so rewarding when we really help that one person. You finally get a good match, and it's just everybody wins.
Yeah.
So
What's he doing?
He's working at a golf course, collecting golf balls, and wiping down golf carts. Yeah, and it's all in a happy environment. There's no stress. There's no like kids kind of ganging up on him, and he's so happy. And it's a great fit. So it was just.
And so it's days like that, and we said, save that voice message for when you have a bad day. Yeah. Just play that, and you know that's why you do what you do.
Exactly.
We use our employers and we market them to give them recognition, but also this is actually talking about marketing materials for employers. If you're thinking of doing a flyer or a brochure, don't tell them all the things that you do in other ways. Our agencies have children's services. We don't say we're an agency with children's services. If this is going to an employer, we strictly talk about the employment services. So there's room for a brochure that includes both, but that's different. If you're calling on businesses, be sure to have it a business-oriented flyer in business language. Use examples and quotes and photos with your people working, or quotes from employers, reference other employers. So there's a lot more information about this in your toolkit, in the workbook. And I think we're all moving to employment first, as we know the state's policy is, and that is to consider and look at every individual as somebody who can work and work towards that goal. I want to let you know that this training was funded by the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, so it's courtesy of them that we got the grant and we were able to do the training. Materials are available on the website, and let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to contact me. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.